The introvert sits quietly at a dinner party, nursing a drink while observing the animated conversation swirling around them. To an outsider, they might appear disengaged or even uncomfortable. But inside their mind, an entirely different experience unfolds. They're processing the subtle shift in someone's tone when discussing their new job, noticing the way another guest's smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, synthesizing these observations into a complex understanding of the social dynamics at play. This isn't withdrawal. This is how an introverted brain engages with the world. Introversion is fundamentally rooted in neurobiology, not personality defects or social deficits. Research in neuropsychology has revealed that introverted brains respond differently to dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and stimulation. While extroverts have a less sensitive dopamine reward system and require more external stimulation to feel pleasure and arousal, introverts possess a highly sensitive dopamine network. This means they reach optimal arousal levels with far less external input. What feels energizing to an extrovert can quickly become overwhelming to an introvert, not because they can't handle it, but because their brain is already operating at a higher baseline level of internal activity. The difference extends beyond dopamine. Introverts show increased blood flow in the frontal lobes and anterior thalamus, regions associated with remembering, planning, and problem solving. Their neural pathways are also longer and more complex, particularly those involving internal processing and reflection. When introverts encounter a stimulus, the information travels a longer route through their brain, passing through areas associated with memory and planning. They're not just experiencing the moment, they're simultaneously comparing it to past experiences, considering implications, and formulating nuanced responses. This is why introverts often pause before speaking. They're not struggling to find words, they're completing an intricate cognitive process. Furthermore, introverts tend to be more responsive to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that activates during inwardly focused activities like thinking, concentrating, and reflecting. While dopamine drives us toward external rewards and sensory experiences, acetylcholine creates feelings of contentment during quiet contemplation. This explains why an introvert can spend hours reading, writing, or working on a solitary project and feel genuinely satisfied, even energized by the experience. Their brain is literally rewarding them for engaging in internal rather than external activities. The critical concept that distinguishes true introversion from other traits is energy direction. Introverts expend energy in social situations and recharge through solitude, while extroverts gain energy from social interaction and deplete it in isolation. This isn't about ability or enjoyment. Many introverts genuinely enjoy socializing, excel at public speaking, and maintain rich social lives. But these activities come at an energetic cost that must be replenished through alone time. An introvert can deliver a brilliant presentation to hundreds of people and still need to sit in silence for an hour afterward to recover their equilibrium. This brings us to the most persistent and damaging myth about introverts, that introversion equals shyness or social anxiety. These are entirely separate constructs. Shyness is fear of social judgment. Social anxiety is a clinical condition involving intense fear of social situations. Introversion is simply a preference for less stimulating environments and a need to recharge alone. An introvert can be socially confident, skilled, and comfortable while still preferring dinner with 2 close friends over a nightclub with 50 acquaintances. Conversely, an extrovert can experience crippling social anxiety despite craving social connection. The confusion between these concepts has led countless introverts to believe something is wrong with them when they're simply wired differently. Society's misunderstanding runs deeper still. We live in what psychologist Carl Jung, who first popularized the terms introvert and extrovert, might have called an extrovert-biased culture. Open office plans, networking events, group projects, and constant connectivity are treated as default settings for human interaction. Schools reward children who raise their hands quickly and participate vocally, often overlooking the student who needs time to formulate a thoughtful response. Corporate culture equates leadership with charisma and visibility, overlooking the strategic thinker who leads through careful analysis and one-on-one mentorship. The message introverts receive, often from childhood, is that their natural way of being is somehow less valuable. Yet introversion persists across cultures and throughout history, affecting an estimated 30 to 50% of the population. This isn't a flaw in need of correction. From an evolutionary perspective, having both introverts and extroverts in a group provided survival advantages. While extroverts explored new territories and forged alliances, introverts observed patterns, anticipated dangers, and developed deep expertise. Both approaches were essential. Both remain essential today. The introverted mind operates like a deep-sea diver rather than a surface swimmer. Where extroverts skim across many experiences, gathering breadth, introverts plunge into depth. They don't just hear what someone says, they analyze tone, consider context, and search for underlying meaning. They don't just attend an event, they absorb the atmosphere, study the dynamics, and integrate the experience into their existing framework of understanding. This depth of processing is exhausting, which is precisely why they need solitude to recharge. Silence isn't empty for an introvert. It's the space where they can finally process everything they've absorbed without new input constantly flooding their system. Understanding these neurological foundations transforms how we view introverted behavior. The colleague who doesn't chat by the coffee machine isn't unfriendly, they're managing their cognitive resources. The friend who declines the group outing after a busy week isn't antisocial, they're responding to a genuine biological need for restoration. The student who contributes less frequently but more substantively isn't unprepared, they're engaging their longer neural pathways to produce more considered responses. When we recognize that introversion is a fundamental difference in how the brain processes and responds to stimulation, we stop trying to fix introverts and start appreciating what they bring to the world. The introvert's internal world resembles a vast library more than a bustling marketplace. While extroverts think out loud, processing ideas through conversation and external feedback, introverts construct elaborate mental architectures in silence. They build, revise, and refine their thoughts internally before presenting them to the outside world. This isn't hesitation or uncertainty. It's a fundamentally different cognitive style that prioritizes internal coherence over external validation. Consider how an introvert approaches a conversation. When someone shares a problem, the extrovert might immediately offer suggestions, thinking through possibilities aloud as they emerge. The introvert, meanwhile, appears to be listening quietly. But internally, they're conducting a complex analysis. They're recalling similar situations from their own experience or things they've read, examining the problem from multiple angles, considering not just solutions but potential consequences of those solutions, and evaluating what response would be most helpful given the specific person and context. When they finally speak, their contribution is often remarkably insightful precisely because it's been thoroughly vetted through this internal process. The frustration arises when others interpret this pause as disengagement or when the conversation has already moved on by the time the introvert is ready to contribute their carefully considered perspective. This preference for depth over breadth manifests in how introverts build relationships. Small talk feels profoundly unsatisfying to many introverts, not because they're snobs or socially inept, but because superficial exchanges don't engage their processing style. When someone asks about the weather or comments on the weekend, an extrovert finds this comfortable and energizing, a way to establish connection through shared, low-stakes interaction. The introvert experiences it as empty calories for the mind. They're wired to seek meaning, patterns, and genuine understanding. They want to know what someone actually thinks about their career choice, what keeps them awake at night, what moment changed their perspective on something important. This hunger for substantial conversation can make introverts seem intense or overly serious when they are simply trying to connect in a way that feels authentic to them. The paradox is that introverts often form fewer relationships but invest more deeply in the ones they do form. They don't collect acquaintances, they cultivate confidants. A study might show that extroverts have larger social networks, but introverts often report equal or greater satisfaction with their smaller circles of intimate friendships. Quality supersedes quantity because depth of connection is what actually energizes and fulfills them. They'd rather have 3 friends who know their fears and dreams than 30 who know their job title and favorite restaurant. This same depth orientation shapes how introverts work and create. The ability to sustain focus for extended periods without external stimulation is one of their greatest cognitive assets. While open office chatter or constant notifications fragment an extrovert's attention without draining them, these same inputs can completely derail an introvert's concentration. When an introvert achieves what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow state, they're not just productive, they're accessing their optimal cognitive functioning. The programmer who codes for 6 hours straight, the writer who loses track of time while developing a chapter, the researcher who becomes absorbed in data analysis, these aren't exceptions among introverts. This is how their brains prefer to work. Their observational capacity sets introverts apart in ways that often go unrecognized. Because they are not constantly talking or seeking the spotlight, they occupy a unique vantage point in any group setting. They notice the team member who grows quiet when a particular topic arises. They detect the shift in energy when certain people enter a room. They observe patterns in behavior over time that more externally focused individuals miss. This makes many introverts exceptional judges of character and situation, though they may struggle to articulate how they know what they know. Their conclusions emerge from accumulated observations their conscious mind hasn't fully catalogued. Decision-making for introverts is an internal odyssey. Faced with a significant choice, an introvert doesn't typically benefit from talking through options with multiple people or making quick, instinctive decisions. They need time and space to turn the question over in their minds, examining it from every conceivable angle. They might spend days or weeks internally debating, considering variables others haven't even identified. This can frustrate people who want quick answers or who interpret deliberation as indecisiveness. But when an introvert finally makes a decision, they've already worked through most potential objections and implications. They're less likely to reverse course because they've done the reversing internally, multiple times, before committing to a direction. Yet living as an introvert in an extrovert-dominated culture exacts a psychological toll that outsiders rarely appreciate. From childhood, introverts receive messages that something about their natural way of being is wrong. Teachers express concern that they don't participate enough in class, even when their written work demonstrates deep engagement. Parents worry they don't have enough friends, not recognizing that too close friendships might be precisely right for that child. Employers value culture fit, which often means comfort with constant collaboration and social engagement. The introvert learns early that success requires performing extroversion, at least some of the time. This performance, what some researchers call acting extroverted, comes at a cost. Studies show that when introverts engage in sustained extroverted behavior without adequate recovery time, they experience increased stress, decreased well-being, and even physical symptoms like headaches and fatigue. It's not that they can't be socially skilled or professionally successful. Many introverts are excellent public speakers, effective leaders, and socially adept. But maintaining these behaviors requires conscious effort and energy expenditure in ways that similar behaviors don't for extroverts. An introvert might deliver a flawless presentation, network effectively at a conference, and lead an engaging team meeting all in one day, but they'll pay for it with exhaustion and a desperate need for solitude afterward. The emotional weight of constantly adapting creates a peculiar form of alienation. Introverts often feel like they're living slightly out of sync with the world around them. They understand the rules of social engagement and can follow them successfully, but the rules themselves feel somewhat arbitrary or exhausting. Why must every work discussion happen in a meeting rather than via thoughtful written communication? Why do people fill silence with noise rather than letting it exist? Why is thinking before speaking seen as slowness rather than conscientiousness? These aren't petty complaints, they're manifestations of a fundamental mismatch between how introverts naturally operate and what their environment demands. Many introverts also struggle with what might be called introvert guilt. They feel bad for needing alone time, for not wanting to attend every social gathering, for finding group activities draining rather than energizing. They apologize for preferences that require no apology. They force themselves to attend events they dread because they fear being seen as antisocial or unfriendly. They stay at parties long past the point of enjoyment because leaving feels like admitting defeat. This internal conflict between honoring their needs and meeting external expectations creates a chronic low-level stress that can lead to burnout, resentment, or a sense of inadequacy. The introvert's relationship with the modern world of constant connectivity presents particular challenges. Smartphones, social media, and perpetual availability create an environment of continuous partial attention that's fundamentally incompatible with how introverted brains function best. The expectation of immediate response to messages, the performance of social media presence, the inability to ever truly disconnect, these technologies were largely designed by and for extroverted interaction styles. For introverts, they represent an invasion of the mental space required for restoration and deep thought. The difficulty isn't technological incompetence, it's that these tools eliminate the boundaries introverts need to function optimally. Yet within these challenges lies profound strength. The very traits that make modern extroverted culture difficult for introverts, their need for depth, their capacity for sustained focus, their preference for meaningful over frequent interaction, their rich internal lives, are precisely what position them to offer unique and valuable contributions. The question isn't how to fix introversion but how to leverage it, how to create lives and work that honor rather than fight against this fundamental aspect of cognitive and emotional wiring. The transformation from viewing introversion as a limitation to recognizing it as a strategic advantage begins with a fundamental reframing. Introverts don't need to become more extroverted to succeed. They need to architect their lives and work around their natural strengths while developing sustainable strategies for navigating extroverted demands. This isn't about accommodation or making excuses. It's about intelligent self-management and recognizing that the traits that make certain environments exhausting are the same traits that create exceptional capability in the right contexts. Consider leadership, a domain traditionally associated with extroverted charisma and commanding presence. Yet research consistently demonstrates that introverted leaders often outperform their extroverted counterparts, particularly when leading proactive teams. The reason illuminates a crucial insight about introverted strength. Introverted leaders excel at listening, genuinely listening, in ways that make team members feel heard and valued. They don't dominate conversations with their own ideas, they create space for others to contribute and then synthesize those contributions into coherent strategy. They're less concerned with being the center of attention and more focused on achieving the best possible outcome. Their natural inclination toward careful deliberation means they're less likely to make impulsive decisions that could derail projects or demoralize teams. An introverted leader's power lies in their ability to observe dynamics others miss. While an extroverted leader might energize a room with their presence, an introverted leader notices who isn't speaking, who seems disengaged, which ideas are being dismissed prematurely. They build trust through consistent, thoughtful engagement rather than charismatic performance. Their one-on-one interactions, where introverts often shine, allow them to understand individual team members deeply, tailoring their approach to what each person needs to perform optimally. The introverted manager who schedules regular individual meetings isn't being inefficient, they're leveraging their natural strength for deep, focused interaction to build stronger relationships and gather better information than any group meeting could provide. In creative and analytical work, the introvert's capacity for sustained, solitary focus becomes an insurmountable competitive advantage. The ability to spend hours, even days, immersed in a complex problem without needing external stimulation allows introverts to achieve depth of understanding and innovation that fragmented attention cannot produce. The scientist who spends months analyzing data patterns, the writer who disappears into their manuscript for weeks, the designer who iterates endlessly on a concept in solitude, these aren't antisocial hermits. They're people operating in their zone of optimal cognitive function. Many of history's most significant breakthroughs came from introverts who had the capacity to sustain focus long enough to see what others missed. The practical challenge for introverts is creating environments and schedules that allow this deep work to flourish. This requires active boundary setting and environmental design. An introvert who accepts every meeting invitation, leaves notifications enabled, and works in high-traffic areas is fighting against their neurobiology. Instead, successful introverts build structure around their energy patterns. They block substantial chunks of time for focused work and protect those blocks fiercely. They design their workspace to minimize interruptions, whether through physical barriers, headphones that signal unavailability, or remote work arrangements that eliminate office distractions. They schedule demanding social or collaborative activities strategically, ensuring recovery time afterward rather than stacking them consecutively. Energy management for introverts operates on principles that might seem counterintuitive to extroverts but are absolutely critical for sustained performance. Just as athletes periodize their training with intense effort followed by recovery, introverts must periodize their social and collaborative demands. The week with 3 networking events, 2 major presentations, and constant team meetings will leave even the most capable introvert depleted and ineffective. But the same introvert who attends one carefully chosen networking event, delivers a well-prepared presentation, and balances collaborative sessions with solo work time will perform brilliantly and maintain their effectiveness long-term. This energy management extends to recognizing that not all social interactions drain equally. Introverts often find that meaningful conversations with close friends or colleagues in small groups can actually be energizing, while superficial interactions with many people deplete them rapidly. Understanding this distinction allows introverts to be strategic about where they invest their social energy. The networking event might be necessary professionally, but limiting attendance to 1 hour and having a specific purpose makes it manageable. Following it with dinner with a close friend rather than more networking can actually restore some energy even while remaining social. The introvert's natural capacity for depth creates an advantage in relationship building that's often overlooked. While they may not maintain vast networks, the relationships they do build tend to be remarkably strong and durable. Colleagues remember the introvert who asked thoughtful questions about their work and actually listened to the answers. Clients appreciate the advisor who took time to understand their specific situation rather than offering generic solutions. Friends value the person who remembers details of conversations from months ago and follows up thoughtfully. In an era of superficial digital connection, the introvert's preference for meaningful interaction becomes increasingly valuable. Quality of connection matters more than ever, and this is territory where introverts naturally excel. Communication style offers another avenue for leveraging introverted strengths. While spontaneous verbal communication may not be an introvert's forte, written communication often is. The time to craft, revise, and refine thoughts before sharing them allows introverts to produce communication that's clear, comprehensive, and persuasive. An introvert who struggles in brainstorming meetings might send a memo afterward that crystallizes the discussion and proposes a coherent path forward. The team member who rarely speaks up in group settings might excel at written proposals, documentation, or analysis that requires precision and depth. Rather than forcing themselves to be more verbally spontaneous, effective introverts lean into written communication as a primary vehicle for their ideas. Advocacy for one's own needs as an introvert requires overcoming years of conditioning that treats those needs as problems to be solved rather than legitimate requirements for optimal functioning. This begins with rejecting guilt about needing alone time. An introvert declining a social invitation to recharge isn't being antisocial any more than someone eating lunch is being greedy. It's meeting a basic need. Similarly, asking for a quiet workspace, requesting agenda items in advance to prepare thoughtful input, or proposing written communication for certain types of decisions isn't demanding special treatment. It's communicating what allows them to contribute most effectively. The key is framing these needs in terms of performance and contribution rather than personal preference. An introvert who tells their manager they need time alone because they're introverted might be met with suggestions to be more of a team player. The same introvert who explains that they produce their best analytical work with uninterrupted focus time and proposes specific blocks for collaboration and solo work is advocating strategically. The emphasis shifts from personal comfort to organizational effectiveness, which is both more persuasive and more accurate to what's actually at stake. Developing what might be called strategic extroversion allows introverts to engage effectively when necessary without depleting themselves unnecessarily. This isn't about becoming a different person, it's about recognizing that certain situations genuinely require more outward-focused behavior and preparing accordingly. The introvert who has an important presentation builds in recovery time before and after rather than scheduling back-to-back commitments. They might arrive at a networking event with specific goals, 3 meaningful conversations rather than working the entire room, that allow them to engage purposefully and leave when they've accomplished their objective. They recognize which meetings require their active participation and which they can attend more passively or even skip without consequence. The introvert who understands their own patterns can also strategically schedule demanding activities during times when they have more energy available. A morning person might schedule important social engagements early in the day before their energy depletes. Someone who finds phone calls particularly draining might batch them on specific days rather than scattering them throughout the week. The seemingly small choice of taking stairs instead of elevators to avoid small talk, eating lunch alone occasionally to reset mentally, or taking a walk between meetings to process and recharge, these aren't signs of social dysfunction. They're sophisticated energy management techniques. Perhaps the most powerful shift for introverts is moving from apologizing for their nature to owning it as a source of distinctive value. The world needs both extroverts and introverts, different cognitive styles and approaches to problems. Extroverts bring energy, enthusiasm, rapid idea generation, and social connectivity. Introverts bring depth, careful analysis, thoughtful synthesis, and meaningful relationship building. Neither is superior, both are necessary. An organization full of only extroverts would generate endless ideas but struggle with careful implementation and risk assessment. An organization of only introverts might develop brilliant strategies but struggle with execution and external engagement. The optimal team, the optimal society, includes both. When introverts stop trying to be extroverts and instead become exceptionally skilled introverts, they discover something liberating. They can be successful, influential, and fulfilled while honoring rather than fighting their fundamental nature. They can lead without dominating, influence without commanding attention, create without collaboration, and connect without constant socializing. They can structure lives that allow for the solitude they need without isolation, the depth they crave without narrowness, the focus they require without rigidity. The introvert's journey isn't about overcoming their introversion. It's about understanding it deeply, leveraging it strategically, and building a life that works with rather than against how they're wired. It's about recognizing that needing time alone to think isn't weakness but a prerequisite for their particular form of strength. It's about valuing depth over breadth, quality over quantity, and meaningful contribution over visible performance. Most fundamentally, it's about rejecting the notion that there's something wrong with them and embracing the reality that introversion, properly understood and skillfully leveraged, is a profound advantage in a world that too often mistakes volume for value and visibility for substance.